Hello everyone, so this is devlog number 10 of trying to build a platformer game using LibGDX. And I know it's been a while, I just got sick last week, but I will try to stick to the bi-weekly updates as much as I can. But lately I just haven't been, I've been busy and I haven't had the time to work on the game. But for this update, I did make some updates to the sprite. As you can see that if I try to face this direction, the sprite of the player the flips, and then I also added a walking animation, which is just changing. It's basically two sprites, but I think it looks good for what it is. And I also updated the moving state component where now it can tell what state it's in. So right now it plays a specific animation when it jumps, and then where it closes its legs, but then when it's falling the legs open up again, which is just, again, there's only two sprites for this, and it's just switching between the two, so it's a lot more simpler. And then I also took the time to refactor the code for the collision, because before I would have all my collision code in this contact listener, but the way I have it set up now is that it's only managing the collisions, or processing the collisions and storing the other entity into the collision component, because in their collision component it has these two properties where it has the collision entity, such that we can keep track of the entity that the current entity collided with. And this is what the contact listener is basically what we're using to add that, as we can see with this entity collision method, where we basically set the collision entity to be the other collision, and we also do it for the other collision entity so that they sync up. And then when we end the contact, we're basically removing the collision from the collision entity component. And this is important because in our collision system, which handles the collision component or processes the collision component, we first check to see if the user, or if the current entity that we're processing has a B2 body component that contains the player bottom category bit. And I also had to update the B2 body component to have this method which checks for our category bits, which we're going to use to define what type of collisions are occurring. In our case, if we go to the game screen, I think, no, game util, these are the current category bits, or rather these ones. Oops. But yeah, these are the current category bits. So far we have a platform, player, player top, player bottom, and enemy. And I guess I could go over, so player top and player bottom are just basically these two sensors on the player that I can check to see if they collided with these two sensors. Because for the player bottom, I plan to use it to first check if the user is currently grounded and it's colliding with the platform, or if it's if it jumps on top of an enemy. In that case, then we could like add a little bit of bounce to it until that the enemy, and we could register that the player has collided with the top part of the enemy. So then we could process that collision differently than if the player is jumping on a platform. And then the player top, we're going to be using it for when the player collides with like a block or something, and then it hits the block. So then we're going to register that collision. And yeah, so in this collision system, I'm basically checking to see if the entity that we're processing is the player bottom. And if it is, then we're going to get the movement state component, which has the flag to check if the player is currently grounded. And then we check to see if the player is currently colliding with anything. If it is, then we're going to get the other entities that we're colliding with B2 body, and then checking to see if that B2 body is the platform. If it is, that means that the player is still grounded, so we update this flag to true. Otherwise, if the player is not currently colliding with anything, then we say is grounded is false, and then the player won't be able to jump. So like right now, when it's in midair, it's not colliding with anything, so is grounded is false, and I can't double jump or hold jump, which will make the player keep flying because we're adding like a Y velocity. So yeah. And yeah, that's pretty much for this update. I did also try testing the maps a bit, because as we can see in this tiled map, I tried testing to see how far the player can jump, and in this case it can do a max jump of 3 blocks, as we can see here. 4 is too much, so if we go here, I can make the player jump between these spaces, but then with here where it's 4 blocks, the player fails to jump. So that's something good to consider in terms of the design, and I will consider that when I'm designing a level. And yeah, so that pretty much wraps up this update. I think the next thing I'm going to focus on is the camera system, and I wanted to follow the player but also like have a little bit of delay, but I'll have to do the research for it because I'm not too familiar with the camera system. With my previous games, I only had a static camera which just captures everything, but I feel like there's a better approach to that for sure. And yeah, so that's pretty much it, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.